This is Dr. David Deshawn kicking off this edition of Saving America with my weekend review commentary. While the Iran war burns on with its impact on gas prices and the Dem shutdown continues with incredible lines at America's airports, what else is going on? First, we must deal with treason by elected officials in Illinois and Minneapolis. In my opinion, they have stepped over the line, and the U.S. Department of Justice needs to step in and start arresting them. Second, tied to that story is the lack of real justice in American courts. I'm amazed that there has not been more backlash as the number of victims is stacking up. Third, class actions involving major players across various industries. Let's take a closer look at these and other hot stories for week 14 of 2026. Dem politicians crossed the line. In an incredibly sad case, a Loyola of Chicago College student, Sheridan Gorman, was shot to death while walking with a group of friends near the campus. The accused is an illegal who was caught and released under Biden. He has reportedly been charged previously for minor crimes, but each time released on the street to commit more mayhem rather than being turned over to ICE due to Chicago's sanctuary policies. Instead of expressing sympathy for the victim's family and condemning the city's policies that helped enable this tragedy, Chicago's mayor has actually tried to blame Trump, who has tried to send National Guard to the city to help with its crime problem. What part of this does Mayor Brandon not understand? Both this insensitive moron and the bigger moron, the Illinois governor, should be criminally charged under federal law for deliberately interfering with federal laws to the detriment of the citizens of the United States living in their operations. The Gorman family are shocked at the reaction of these warped politicians, stating, and I quote, "We are calling on Governor J.B. Pritzker and Chicago's sanctuary politicians to commit to not releasing this criminal illegal alien from jail back into America's neighborhoods." In the meantime, the accused defense attorney claimed the shooter is brain damaged from being shot in the head in his home country of Venezuela in 2018. Well, he somehow was able to navigate himself to the USA. I don't know how brain damaged that is. How did he do that if he's so disabled? Why did the failed Biden administration let him in if he was really a mess? Let me share my own reaction to this. I belong to a professional group that gave me the choice of either Minneapolis or Chicago for this year's conference. I voted for neither. They went ahead and scheduled it for Minneapolis, and therefore I am boycotting it. I call on reasonable taxpaying Americans who have had enough to do everything they can to boycott these rogue anti-American locations. You will be safer, and as the cliche goes, vote with your feet and your wallet. In fact, I will not take a flight that touches down in either Chicago airport. For the rest of the country, make sure politicians at all levels know that you will vote them out of office if they go into these illegal sanctuaries. Hey, if you've enjoyed our content here on Saving America, be sure to check out our new site on Patreon, and that is going to be Dr. Dave Saves America on Patreon. Be sure to check it out for additional content. American injustice system. Day after day, I hear stories of horrible crimes committed by people let out of jail early or getting sentences with minimal jail time. I recently covered the Norfolk, Virginia shooter who previously should have gotten 20 years, was sentenced to 11 years and served only 8, and he was trying to help ISIS. He should have had his citizenship revoked and been shipped back to his home country as soon as he was released from prison. Sadly, in another follow-up, the 83-year-old vet passed away following being shoved onto the tracks in a New York City subway, reportedly by an illegal who had been arrested 15 times previously. His death was despite the heroic efforts of a young man who was also shoved onto the tracks with him. That man, injured himself, made sure the vet was lifted back onto the subway platform. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office has moved the charges against the illegal from assault to murder. And a terrible example from Seattle. A criminal with 30 years of repeat offenses pulls an 80-year-old woman from her car with her dog inside. Nearby, people try to stop him, but he backs the car over the woman, thereby killing her. He drives a short distance and stabs the dog to death and then runs and tries to hide from the police. He has not gone to trial due to a claim of mental illness. This is only when he is not on his meds. I am sympathetic with the victims, not the perps. If he knew enough to do what he did, he knows enough to be tried and executed. If anyone cares, then shoot him up with the meds each day. This is not his choice. End of that story. Day after day, I see people committing crimes that are out on no cash bail for serious offenses. That needs to end. I see crimes that should have the death penalty being pled down to a few years in prison, if that much. Take the case of a teen who committed serious crimes as a juvenile. Instead of being transferred to prison at 18 to serve the rest of his sentences, he was simply released. 2 weeks later, he committed a murder. We must start holding our judges and prosecutors responsible for endangering the rest of us. My mantra, victims in society first, not criminals. Big class actions in the news. Dominating the headlines is the Los Angeles jury verdict against Meta, the parent of Facebook and Instagram, and Google. The platforms were accused of causing a young woman's depression and suicidal thoughts. She claims she became addicted to the platforms from a very young age. Both companies said they plan to appeal. This will likely result in a review of the protections of Section 230 that gives these platforms a very different structure where they have immunity, where they act just as the conduit, not the content creator. Separately, a jury awarded $375 million to the Justice Department of the state of New Mexico in a case against Meta, claiming that the platform did not do enough to protect young users from pedophiles and so forth. While I'm no fan of Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Meta, I do have concerns about the direction of these verdicts. Bluntly, it is the parents who are responsible for their kids, not Meta or Google. Take the phones away from them. Some school districts have banned phones during the school day. Hey, it's about time. Meanwhile, Bank of America, BOA, has settled with survivors of the Epstein pedophile scandal for $72.5 million. The accusation here was that the big bank facilitated the activities of Epstein. Coverage of the settlement noted that the plaintiff lawyers may try to get as much as 30% of the settlement, which would be over $20 million. Separately, Kroger agreed to a $17 million settlement of a class action in Ohio that alleged Kroger took advantage of pharmacy customers. The specific claim was that customers of the Kroger pharmacy who had health insurance did not receive the appropriate credits against Kroger's own discount plan. The problem is that this is a nationwide settlement, which will then have legal fees and other costs deducted before the claims can be considered. There is no claim procedure yet because the court has not approved it. Once there's an approval, there will be deadlines and a place to file a claim. As a customer who would have some eligibility in this matter, I wonder if I'll get all of 50 cents from the settlement a couple years from now. Dems talking from both sides of their mouths. The current talking point for the Dems is the cost of living. They are having a field day with the big surge in gas price increases, and obviously the Fed is not going to lower base interest rates during an inflationary time like this. I find the whole thing laughable since the Dems are the party of tax and spend. New York City, Virginia, and New Jersey taxpayers need to prep for massive tax increases. In some cases, this will dwarf the other cost of living factors. New York City and the other blue states, including California, are looking at so-called wealth taxes and high death taxes. Taxpayers in Washington state also need to watch out. A possible pushback is, hey, I don't make much money and millionaires should pay more. The problem with that is the politicians always promise somebody else is going to pay those taxes. The rest of us always end up paying it. Further, the rich have means and will move to lower-cost states. Note the millionaires who have fled New York and California for Texas and Florida. My advice for taxpayers is to raise Cain with their legislators. If that doesn't work, move to a lower tax state. However, if you do that, be sure to tell the loser state, last one out, turn out the lights. Business challenges continue. It seems that every week in my week of review feature, we have a well-known company shutting down or at least closing locations. The latest to join the shutdown list is Jack in the Box. The company has indicated that they will shut down about 100 locations, but most are franchisee locations, not locations owned by the franchisor. Of course, they also said they will be opening a handful of new locations. On the flip side, Home Depot, the famous big box pioneer, has announced that one of their divisions will acquire Mingledorff's, which is a regional wholesale distributor of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning equipment, parts, and supplies. While the overall home improvement industry is struggling, this is believed to be a favorable step for Home Depot. The challenge in the home improvement industry is that many consumers are focused bluntly on survival. So optional things like jazzing up their yards are taking a back seat. That is cutting into gross sales and margins. A surprise disclosure disrupts plans. I remember a couple decades ago when every time I went to a certain grocery store, there were people with flyers near the entries telling me not to shop there since the grapes being sold were harvested by non-union laborers. I vaguely recall that the so-called leader was someone who I dismissed as a communist, Cesar Chavez. He was tied to the United Farm Workers. I did not realize until this week that he had more impact in certain locations than I had realized. Here in Houston, there was even a small street named for him. A handful of states celebrated Cesar Chavez Day. I believe this was driven by a desire on some on the left to have a Hispanic hero parallel to Martin Luther King for Black Americans. What triggered this were very recent allegations of child abuse by Chavez going back decades. Apparently, due to the persons involved and the level of detail, the reports are being taken very seriously. The most damning report is a woman who said she was repeatedly raped by him when he was 45 and she was 13. Another victim said he started with her at age 12. Some adults also reported rapes now, but admitted to holding off reporting them at the time due to the farm workers movement. A different stat is that he had 4 children by women other than his wife. Chuck Norris dies at age 86. I do not usually mention the deaths of actors or other celebrities on Saving America. However, I did want to give a shout out in honor of Chuck Norris. In the early 1990s here in Houston, I had the opportunity to join Chuck at the Heights Chamber of Commerce luncheons when I was running for state office. He was always professional and soft-spoken. He never came off like a movie star, just a regular person. After serving in the Air Force, he became a top professional in the martial arts. He won numerous championships, which eventually led to movie roles, with his breakthrough a movie with Bruce Lee in the mid-1970s. He became best known for starring in the TV show Walker, Texas Ranger, which started in 1993 and ran for 7 seasons. Chuck stood out in Hollywood because of his everyman approach to life and the fact that he was unapologetically conservative in that far-left bastion. I extend my condolences to his family. And a far less notable passing, Dr. Paul Ehrlich died at age 93. He was best known for his 1968 book, The Population Bomb, where he claimed we were running out of food and space due to the 6 billion people on Earth at that time. The Earth now has 8.25 billion people, and there's ample food, just distribution issues. Of course, Ehrlich was never correct and never apologized. He could be viewed as the first Chicken Little of the climate hoax. An herb called Kratom in the news. Maybe I was behind a rock or something, but this is something I had missed up to this point. I recently became aware of issues related to a botanical herb called Kratom. The University of Virginia released a report on an alarming increase in reports to poison control centers due to the use of this herb. The herb is described as a psychoactive drug, Apparently, people take it for pain, believing it to be safe, natural substance. However, the downside appears to be very serious, with claims of addiction, illness, and even death. Presently, regulation is at the state level, and the feds are reviewing it now for possible federal regulation. The report indicates it's sold at convenience stores and places like that. It reminds me of the early days of LSD back in the 60s, which was supposed to provide a lot of cool experiences. However, there are people experimented with one dose and had serious mental issues afterwards. Anyone consuming it should definitely consult with their doctor first. The report indicates that the substance has specifically had significant adverse effects when combined with other drugs. This is Dr. David D. Shine. Thanks for joining me for this special edition of Saving America. Remember, a new Saving America show is aired on the Brushwood Media Network every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Listen on any of the 16 network stations, Apple or Google mobile app, Apple CarPlay, TuneIn, Smart Speaker, and all smart TVs. Find more information at the brushwoodmedianetwork.com. Please be sure to join us each week. We welcome and love your feedback from our growing audience.